Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a question for you first before I begin, before we get started. And I want to know who this sounds familiar for. And so, if this is you, drop a me in the chat if any of these land for you. And if you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay in the chat. If you're watching live, I'd love to know. So, drop hashtag live in the chat. But do any of these sound familiar? Have you ever left a meeting, hung up the phone, or walked away from a conversation and then spent the next 2 hours replaying this in your mind? Maybe it's thoughts of, "Why did I say that?" Or thoughts of, "I totally could have said that better." Or it could be thoughts of, "Will this person be upset with me?" If you've ever done this live is for you today. It's interesting because this is a conversation I asked in stories last week. I had a bunch of different posts asking kind of different ways this can show up in our lives. And the number of people that said, yes, that's 100% me, or I've done that multiple times, I was really blown away by that, and it made me realize this is a conversation that's worth having. In my networking group last week, I also asked them, I said, "Who's ever gone through a conversation and then afterwards replayed the entire conversation in their minds?" And everyone in this room of business owners, every single person put their hand up. And it was like, okay, so this is a real struggle that people deal with. And it's something that often people may not recognize that other people are doing as well. And it's that feeling of like, what if I said something wrong? Or what if I could have said things better? And it's this loop that we can go deal with in our minds that can be quite frustrating. And so clients have said to me multiple times things like they rewrite a text message or an email or something multiple times before they even send it. Some actually end up not sending it at all because they just have this fear or this doubt in themselves that they're saying something wrong. Some of them think about the perfect response hours later. That's typically been my pattern in the past. I'll go into a conversation and I'll handle it okay. Like, okay, a good example of this, I was a member of Toastmasters for, I believe, 2 years, president for a little while, really enjoyed the experience. But one thing I found challenging was table topics, which is a time where you're given an impromptu thing to speak about and you have to just like on the fly start talking about this. I would kind of stumble my way through it and usually did okay. But then afterwards, it was like, oh, I could have said this. Oh, I could have said that. And all these other things would start to come up. And how often does that show up in everyday conversation for you? For many people, this is a common thing that happens, or the replaying and thinking, like, what if I said something wrong? What are people going to think of me? And so, thinking of the perfect response hours later, definitely something I can put my hand up for that one as well. And starting to understand what's going on in my body is what we're going to talk about, or in my mind is what we're going to talk about a little bit more in this live. Also, I have a meetup coming up tomorrow. What if you're not broken? What if there's nothing wrong with you? You're just out of alignment. And that's a big part of the conversation that happens around there is realizing that our nervous system, your unconscious mind, is doing everything in its power. Its main directive is to keep you safe. And so that can look like these moments of second guessing ourselves, of self doubt, of self sabotage, of holding ourselves back, of not moving forward, all these different things. And it feels like, why does this keep happening to me? When you can start to get an understanding of what's actually going on in your mind from a protective side of things, it makes shifting and moving forward a lot less of a struggle. So another thing that I hear from conversations all the time, replaying a conversation while trying to fall asleep. This is actually something that's come up a lot recently and not something that I have ever dealt with. I'm the kind of person who like, I don't even remember my head hitting the pillow and I'm out. But for some people, this is what happens. This can be the 3 a.m. thoughts. You wake up in the middle of the night and all of a sudden your brain's like, haha, you've been busy and distracted all day long. You've been ignoring me. Now I've got you. And so the self-talk just goes over and over and over again. And more of what we're going to talk about again is like, how can we recognize this and help the mind find a place of calm, find a place of settle so that it doesn't have to keep looping in this pattern. Another thing that I hear all the time, talking themselves out of posting, especially business owners, posting, applying, speaking up. I heard a story about a colleague, someone that I know, about how when they were a child, they remember speaking up in front of the class, and all of a sudden, there was attention, and people were looking at them. And from that point forward, it was very difficult to be heard or to speak up. And this is when I do timeline work with clients, which is where we go back and figure out what was the initial sensitizing event that led to the reaction that you're having now. It can be very liberating and freeing to realize that that story, that meaning that we placed on an event that happened when we were probably under the age of 8, could be shaping the way you're responding to everything in your life. If it was your first experience of anger, that can shape the way that you respond to anything that creates a sense of anger moving forward. Because our mind is always looking at situations and saying, what is this like? And looking for something to compare it to. The way we behave in everyday life and in our world all the time is based on the meaning that we placed on something. And it may have been something that served a purpose when you were younger, but that's not serving you anymore. It says, okay, so I did this thing when you were 6 years old and it kept you safe. And so, okay, so when this similar situation comes up now, I'm going to use the same technique, the same strategy. And while it may have been useful when you were 6, it may actually be the reason that you haven't been able to move forward. It could be relationships. It could be health. It could be in your profession, in your career. It could be in any of the things that you want to go after, you want to pursue. And we don't realize that our mind is actually trying to protect us, which is leading to holding us back. And this is where kind of doing the unconscious mind work, a lot of the stuff that I talk about in the meetups really leans into this. Because when we can start to understand what our mind is doing, it's not fighting us, it's trying to protect us. And how can we shift it so that it starts protecting us in a way that moves us towards where we want to go rather than holding us back? So, okay. So, yes, the talking themselves out of posting, applying, speaking up is a common thing I hear from clients. Also, assuming they did something wrong with very little evidence. I hear this all the time, especially when we're taking a look at these past events. It's like, I just thought that I was doing something wrong. And it's like mind reading, basically. It's one of the kind of meta programs that we talk about in NLP. And it's realizing how we're using our language in different ways, and we can be mind reading, like, oh, that person is doing that. You don't know what other people are thinking. But so often, to create a place where we feel safe and protected, we'll create stories about why somebody else is doing something. And it may be not even close to the truth at all. And then that's the thing that gets in your way and holds you back. So when we think like I overthink because I'm anxious, or I overthink because I lack confidence, or maybe I overthink just because that's just the way I am. Another possibility for this way of thinking is that, again, your brain is analyzing a situation and it's more comparing it to what's happened in the past, some way that it protected you before. It could be trying to prevent you from rejection, from pain, from embarrassment, from conflict, from disappointment in the future. And so the replaying isn't random, it's an attempt to keep you safe once again. And so if we think about locking the front door, checking it once makes sense. Checking it 10 times doesn't actually make you safer. It just keeps your nervous system stuck in uncertainty. And that's similar to what's going on here when a conversation happens and we're like replaying it over and over and over again and feeling like, oh, if I do that, that means things will be okay. It doesn't change the situation. It doesn't change what happens. It's you think you're solving a problem, but you're actually reinforcing it often. And so, what's the good news here? The good news is you don't have to spend the rest of your life living in your head. You don't have to keep questioning yourself with every interaction that you have, and you don't have to become someone else to get there. Sometimes it's all that's needed really is an understanding that there's a pattern running in the background. And then this pattern ultimately is trying to keep you safe and trying to protect you. So if this feels familiar, if anything landed for you in this, as I mentioned, we are going to be diving into this even deeper about where it shows up, how it happens, and what the next steps are to help you move in the direction that you want to, and maybe stop this game of replaying the conversations over and over again. It's something that I do it in like kind of ways, like I mentioned, table topics. Afterwards, I'm like, oh, I could have said this, I could have said that, it would have been better, I could have done something differently. And we all have different ways of this showing up for ourselves. but realizing how much mental energy that it takes to do this, to stay in a place of replaying these conversations and realizing that, does it really actually serve you? And what's a way that you can look at things differently? We're going to dive into this tomorrow. I'm going to give you an example. I have a demo at every one of the meetups, and we'll go through a technique and I demonstrate so you can see it in real time that change is possible and that it's really not as complicated or difficult as many people think. Most people leave the meetup saying, like, this was fantastic. I got so much out of this. It's an opportunity for some personal growth, and it's a wonderful community. So, if this landed with you at all, if you replay conversations, if you're someone who doubts after you've said something, did I upset someone? What will they think about me? What does this mean about me? All of these kind of self talks that we can replay in our minds over and over again. This meetup will be a great solution for you, or a great thing for you to experience and come and attend. So, I am Kate McDowell, and tomorrow I will be running this meetup. I will drop the link in the comments below for the meetup if you want to check it out. And otherwise, I'd love to know, like, you can RSVP to the link in the comments, but what stood out for you from this meetup? Just drop one word in the comments below. It'd be great to see. And thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you soon.